Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, September 24th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Akron game is in one day, the game against Michigan in 64 days. On yesterday's show, I talked to Buckeye Scoop's X's and O's guru Ross Fulton about the Ohio State offense. Today, we're talking defense, and there is a ton to talk about. Ross, thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here, Tom.
So I guess on defense, this was a new thing. They had Matt Barnes calling the defense for the first time. Kerry Combs up in the box, Matt Barnes down on the field. You had criticized them for being like way too predictable in the first couple games. Did you notice any difference on that on Saturday? Was that something that got a little better with Barnes calling the plays?
It did get better. They mixed cover one and cover three, which are their two primary coverages more. They played a few different varieties of cover three. They even mixed in a little bit of cover two, which is, split safeties, two deep safeties and five underneath, which is a difference for them. And that threw Tulsa off some. And then they mixed in a lot more blitzing. They used a lot of what's called a cross dog, where the two inside linebackers, cross, pass, and blitz on rundowns, and you call it's called a hot coverage behind it. It's 3 deep, 2 under, and you sort of try to sit on the inside, quick throws. And so they did do a lot more variety. Certainly a step in the right direction.
Is cross dog different from up dog?
I've seen different names for it. If people remember long enough ago with Mark D'Antonio and Pat Narduzzi probably made it famous in Michigan State. They love that blitz. The concept is there's an old saying in football: if your linebackers can't read, blitz them, because there's no point in them sitting there. You might as well at least have them take a gap. But also it takes away some of the people being indecisive about RPOs or run pass options, because everyone's blitzing. Then you got the five guys in the back playing coverage, and sort of the way it's designed is the two deep zone or two underneath zone defenders kind of sit right in where that, inside glance route we've talked about a lot, or slant route on RPOs are thrown. And so you hope to sort of take away that easy throw. So I'm sure, and, we can talk about the need to create pressure, but I'm sure they were trying to hope to hit all those things by doing it.
We clearly have done a bunch of these shows together before, because you just read my mind. Hey, Ross, they're blitzing more. Is that because they can't get pressure with the front four? Seems like that might be a necessary part of the defense moving forward if they can't get pressure up front. What do you say?
I have to say that I'm sort of flummoxed by it, to be honest. Like I thought going into the season, like the back seven was a big concern, but I was like, at least they'll be able to create hopefully some more pressure. I mean, you saw Tyreek Smith do it against Clemson last year. So you would think that, and it's nowhere. Ryan Day talked about it earlier this week. I mean, I think it's a glaring, any coverage, particularly zones, but, also you can't cover someone a man forever either, is going to break down eventually. And so, until you can get pressure with your front floor, you have to blitz. They use man blitz, they use zone blitz. I'd like to see them use a little bit more of like simulated pressures, which are, you show blitz, but you end up still only bringing 4, but you maybe bring 3 from one side and drop guys on the other side into coverage. But they're going to have to continue to work to generate pressure, because when they did get pressure against Tulsa, and they did get a little bit more than they had in the previous games, generally good things happened. They forced throwaways or made the quarterback move off his spot. So, it's an unfortunate situation that I think for the Ohio State defense is in, but they're going to have to keep trying to gin up ways to create pressure.
Yeah, we talked today earlier in the week, as you mentioned. We also talked to Larry Johnson, and Larry Johnson was talking about the fact that, you have Tyreek Smith, and he said, you watch the film and it's like, it's not as bad as basically it's not as bad as you think it is. Like if you're just watching the game, it's like, wow, he's never getting there. And it's like, you watch the film with him carefully, and it's like, well, he's actually very close to getting there. He's just not getting there. And I guess they're getting better pressure up the middle than you probably would have expected, but it's like from Tyleik Williams. Like it's all backwards from what you would have thought before the year. Like you said, you expected really great defensive line play, and then, well, it'll be interesting to see how the corners hold up. And instead, the corners are like it seems like almost the surest thing on the defense, at least at times it's felt like that. And they can't get pressure up front. It's just, this has just been a bizarre season for this defense, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And obviously they were missing, Zach Harrison on Saturday, which, has had his own ups and downs, but is, generally probably the most consistent. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the problems I think stem from the fact that like they don't have a nose guard, or they haven't felt comfortable with one. Drawn Cage was out to start the year. They tried to play, as we've talked about, the week before, Haskell Garrett at one technique, and then Tron Vincent at three, and that was just a kind of a mess. It basically negated what Garrett was good at, and he was not a good one technique, and it took away that kind of pass rush. And so, I think they've kind of been searching for answers. And, Williams, I mean, got as much a consistent push as we've seen this year. And so obviously he's going to have to play more. I still think that, JT can continue to sort of grow into it, and he got close. And yeah, I mean, Tyreek Smith getting close has almost sort of become a punchline at this point. But like, they do have guys, and maybe if they kind of can put it together and work in unison, that'll help. I also think, again, they'll help the defensive line if they're bringing pressure from different places, so that it's not as predictable for the offensive line and the opponent as to where the pass rush is coming from.
You mentioned this earlier, and I want to sort of have you explain this in a little more detail. You talked about the fact that they play a lot of cover 1 and cover 3, but then they were mixing in more cover 2 on Saturday. Now, people may wonder, well, why, if it's 1 and 3, why would doing something in the middle make it such a big difference? So can you explain, how the one high look that Ryan Day prefers? I feel like I'm contractually obligated to use that phrase every time we do one of these shows, but the one high look that Ryan Day prefers, how a cover 2 defense is different from that, and why that's such a different look that can maybe, the plays that beat one of those don't work against the other nearly as well.
Yeah, and so again, I mean, a single high, it's a little bit of a misnomer in some sense, because cover 3 you have 3 deep defenders, right? Mm-hmm. Versus cover 2 you have 2 deep. But it's single high in the sense that that's sort of a football term for it. Like, in both cover 1 and cover 3, you have a middle of the field safety. But the one consistent thing between cover 1 and cover 3 is that an offense knows the corners are always going to have to carry things vertical. And so, every coverage has what's called coverage beaters that pass patterns that work really well against it. So, cover 3, as you can think about, you have essentially a deep third guy and a underneath guy that's called a curl flat defender. So that gives you 2 zone defenders. So if you run a flood route where you put 3 wide receivers against those 2 zone defenders, that gets open. So you see that route all the time against Ohio State, or like a sail route. Cover 1, you see the routes like what Tulsa did for 2 touchdowns, where you pick routes or rub routes, to try to mess with man coverage. So cover 2, it has its own routes that can defeat it. If you have 2 deep safeties and you run 3 vertical to 3 guys deep, you now have 3 guys against 2, which is, this is where Tampa 2 came from, because you get the third guy going down the field with it. And we could go on and on, but like if an offense expects to get cover 3 and they run a certain type of route that works against cover 3, it may not be as effective against cover 2, because now, you're expecting that corner to carry someone vertically, and instead he's sitting in the flat. And so, again, like anything else, change-ups are effective, in baseball or in football. So hence the term. So, if you're just too predictable, it just makes it too easy for the offense. So, them running cover 2 has its own set of issues in terms of the stopping the run, because it changes the run fits. And so, like, they're never going to be playing it a ton, but it does help, to throw it in. And that's why it's important for them to stop the run, so that they can then be a little bit more diverse on second and third down. When it's 3rd and 2, the offense kind of has its pick of what to do. Whereas, if it's 3rd and 8, you got a lot more advantages as a defense.
So you were not a real big fan of what they were doing against trips formations. That's where there's 3 wide receivers on one side of the formation. So can you explain what they were doing before, and then what they did that was a little different against Tulsa that seemed to maybe work a little better?
Yeah. So before, they were doing cover over, which is a way of saying if they're very focused on matchups. So if they were putting both wide receivers, for instance, to the same side of the field, they were flipping the corner over onto the second wide receiver. So that's what we call it a cover over. And so, you know, Oregon was purposely putting all their receivers to one side, and then they were putting basically a tight end to the boundary to crack back. And so when we talk about crack replace, it's harder when a corner is used to having to deal with that, whereas like the linebacker is not so much, because they're effectively having to act like a corner. And so again, there's trade-offs. If you don't do cover order over, you're asking your boundary or short side corner to effectively provide run support, but lots of corners can do that. Corners, you know, there's the old saying, corners can't tackle, but you know, Iowa's made a living for years having their corners provide effective boundary run support. It can be done. And so instead they weren't doing that on Saturday. So they were keeping the boundary corner to the boundary, and they were pushing the coverage then essentially to the free safety effectively became the underneath hook curl defender over the third or inside receiver to trips, and the bullet essentially became, which is at this point should be a term that's discarded. We should just call him the strong safety to make everyone's lives easier. But the strong safety was then playing as the deep middle of the field defender.
All right, there for people who are going, wow, that was a lot of information. Let's send you out on a nice easy one here. Just give us a thumbs up, thumbs down. Were you more or less encouraged about what this defense could be this fall / will be this fall after watching the Tulsa game? Like, obviously this is not a finished product, but you know, did you walk away from that game going, there is significant progress, this is going to be a much better defense? Or was it like they changed it and not nearly enough got better? Like, what, you know, thumbs up or thumbs down on that defensive performance against Tulsa and what it might mean for the rest of the year?
Overall, thumbs up. It was a step in the right direction. They at least looked competent in the fact that, like, you know, run gaps were accounted for. Whereas against Oregon, it was just like, you know, no one looked on the same page. They cleaned some stuff up. You know, it's not going to be perfect. I mean, playing zone defense is on third down is hard. Again, if you can't get a pass rush and they have a lot of time. And so, you know, they don't need to be a top 10 defense. You know, I like using SP plus, like the advanced stats ratings. And right now they're first in offense and 37th in defense or something like that. You know, if they can get to 20 to 25 on defense, when you have a good offense, that could be enough for you. So they just need to continue, you know, keep working on getting the personnel honed down as to who they want to play, and keep going with where they are, you know, adding some more diversity little by little, and they should be okay.
And, you know, I think the expectation is they should be okay tomorrow when they play Akron. I don't know, I haven't looked at the updated line, but it was right around 7 touchdowns. So that would be a pretty big upset if they were not okay on Saturday against Akron. But we will be there to cover that game before, during, and after. From the Horseshoe, we'll have live pregame coverage, live postgame coverage, all sorts of coverage throughout the day, throughout the evening, all at BuckeyeScoop.com. You get access to our fantastic team of insiders. If you are on our Ask the Insiders board, just have to sign up today to become a member, and we'll have lots of interesting insight and analysis. Always a fun game thread on the board, lots of stuff, all at Ask the Insiders on BuckeyeScoop.com. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell, subscribe to our channel, and you'll be able to get notified every time we post a new video. So tomorrow when we go live for our pregame show and our postgame show, it'll all be on youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop, and then you'll get a little notification on your phone that says, hey, they're going live to start the pregame show. That way you won't miss it. We'll do our postgame show that way too. We stream our postgame interviews with the players and coaches. That's all at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. So subscribe today on YouTube, and that way you'll get notified and you won't miss a thing. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.